Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Lost in the Dark podcast. This will be episode 1 of a new series called Heavy Metal Folklore. Now, we've done special kind of sub-series in the past. At least one we did our album artwork artist episodes. You can go back and check those out. These ones will be Heavy Metal Folklore, where we look at folklore surrounding some bands themselves, band names, different things like that, things about bands. We basically look at the legends behind some of heavy metal's own legendary bands. For example, a couple that we have coming up, we got one about Mayhem, and a lot of folklore surrounding that band, and also we'll have an episode coming out about the Black Dahlia murder and the actual Black Dahlia murders, just as examples of things coming down the line. So let's get started. Tonight, however, in honor of their recent 10th studio album release, Hexed, we will be talking about the folklore behind the band name Children of Bodom, and where they derive their name and things like that. We also gave a review to their album. Be sure to check that out on YouTube. Okay, let's get started. So, the name Children of Bodom is derived from an event that took place near Espoo, in Espoo, Finland, where Alexi Laiho and the rest of the Children of Bodom band is from. And it is one of, if not the most infamous unsolved homicide case in Finnish history. Okay? On June 5th, 1960, at Lake Bodom, two 15-year-old females, and now these are Finnish names, so I am probably going to slaughter them, but I'll do the best I can. Mela Ermeli Bjorklund. That's one name. That's one of the first 15-year-old female. The second is Anja Tuulikki Mäki, and two 18-year-old males, Seppo and Terrio Boisman, and Niles Wilhelm Gustafsson. So there were two 15-year-old females, two 18-year-old males, boyfriend, girlfriends. It was a couple's weekend, and they're going out to camp and have a fun time at Lake Bodom. However, some real quick. So this is in Finland, okay, and this is in June. This is during the summer. Something that you should understand going in. Excuse me, got a lot of throat clearing. Hold on a second. Something that we should understand going in is that it's a little bit different there to where, at least from where I'm from here in Michigan. Up there, they have it stays light for longer than it does here. So the sun, you only get sometimes 5 hours or 4 hours of darkness at night. So the sun would be up, at around 10 or 11 p.m., go down, and then come back up. Dawn would be starting at 4 a.m. You know what I mean? So just to keep a frame of reference for the timeline and things like that. So at around, estimated at around 4 a.m., they were, the four teenagers, or three of the four teenagers were killed while sleeping inside the tent by stabbing and blunt force trauma to their heads. The fourth, 18-year-old Niles, was found outside of the tent badly injured. He had been stabbed, had his jaw broken, and a concussion. Despite extensive investigation, the perpetrator was never identified, and various theories on the killer's identity have been presented over the years. They get killed estimated at around 4 a.m. Basically what happened is they had a pop-up tent, so basically a small like A-frame, and they were all sleeping inside of it. Someone cut the wire that was holding up the top of the tent, collapsing in on them. It was a canvas tent, and they literally just beat and stabbed at the tent until pretty much all of them were dead. Then at around 6 a.m., some local bird watchers were near the campsite. They saw the downed tent and a, quote, blonde man walking away from the area. They didn't, however, notice that there were like dead bodies and it was a crime scene, because I think they were a little bit far away or something like that. They saw a down tent and a guy walking away, so they just assumed it was a guy at his campsite. That man, there's pretty much no doubt in anyone's mind that the person that they saw was the murderer. However, they only saw him from behind, so all they saw was that he was a tall, blonde guy. They didn't see the bodies. The bodies were actually discovered by a jogger at around 11 a.m. and the police arrive around noon. Now, that's where we get to where they find the bodies, okay? Now, one major factor to look at here is throughout the entire history of this case, the police work from the start has been heavily criticized. So, like, basically, from the start, it was a confusing scene. Rather than enter the tent and stabbed the teenagers from the inside, it appeared that the assailant had attacked blindly from the outside. He or she clearly used a knife to stab the victims, and their bodies showed evidence of another weapon and an unidentified blunt object. Several strange items were missing from the scene too, and yeah, like for like the motor. So they had motorcycles. They took motorcycles there. The keys to the motorcycles were gone, but the motorcycles were still there. But the motorcycles were just missing. Also, Niles Gustafson's the survivor, his shoes were missing, but then they were later found roughly a half mile from the tent, along with some of his clothing, and they were like partially buried. And another thing that I'll get to later, something to keep in. Well, no, actually, I'll just get to that later. The police, they failed to take official recordings of their findings. They did not cordon off the area, leaving it open to contamination. And shortly after the police left, curious onlookers and careless campers all but destroyed the murder scene in an attempt to rectify their mistake. Police enlisted the help of soldiers to search for the missing items. The site was instead further trampled, and most of the items were never found. Some of the items, like I said, included like their bathing suits were missing. Everyone's wallet was missing. One of the victims, Seppo, his leather jacket was never found, and nor were any murder weapons. Now, this isn't empty forest. Like, it was later, like during this investigation, it was found out that the forest was pretty much filled with homeless people. Like, there were like shanty towns in the forest where a lot of people were living. Like, it wasn't heavily populated. It was still like, out there a little bit. But it was like, it's also like 20 miles away from Helsinki, which is Finland's capital. So, you know what I mean? So this isn't like deep, you know what I'm saying? This isn't forest where no one's been for thousands of years, you know what I'm saying? So that's the situation, basically. Just at some point in the night. So another key detail, I should say, like I said, there was a couples weekend. The two couples were there. They were dating. Let's see here. Key detail. Hold on. So yeah, Niles, the only survivor, was dating Mala, M-A-I-L-A, Mela. Niles was dating Mela. Go with that. So basically, the other two were found dead inside the tent. Niles was outside the tent, barely alive, and Mela was actually on top of the tent, and she was undressed from the waist down, and after she was dead, she was stabbed 15 times. So she got the most violent attack out of anyone by far, which suggests, some personalness. I don't know. It does suggest that its particular attack on her was more personal than not. So we have shoddy police work. We have a murder of 4 teenagers. And this basically quickly becomes a pretty huge story. So let's get into our suspects. We end up having 4 suspects basically. First one, and again these names, I'm sorry. Pentti Soininen, literally Soininen, Soininen. Pentti Soininen. He was kind of crazy. He had already been convicted of several violent crimes, as well as property crimes. He lived in the area of Lake Bodom, and he was someone who, he was just a local loon basically, and people said he was crazy. He liked to get drunk and high a lot, they say, and he would talk a lot of crazy shit when he was messed up. Now, apparently a number of years after, while he was in police custody, and apparently while he was intoxicated, he admitted to committing the murders, committing the Lake Bodom murders. Now, again, he was intoxicated, so there was never really any credibility given to his confession. So they kind of just let it go because this guy just talks a lot. That's what he does. Now, but the weird ending, the weird footnote on that one is he actually ended up hanging himself in 19. Now, okay, wait, really quick. He also, the weird part about him admitting to it was that he would have been 15 years old at the time of the murders. So a 15-year-old would have had to have been the one to kill those 4 teenagers in that extra brutal way. And now and the other footnote, though, is that he ended up hanging himself in prison in 1969 on June 5th, the anniversary of the Lake Bodom murders. That's pretty interesting. But he was generally considered one of the weaker of the suspects, although he literally admitted it. That's the crazy thing about this case, is we actually have three different people who confessed to this crime, and still it doesn't help at all. It actually just makes the fucking waters even more murky. So another big time suspect was Vladimir Gilstrom. He was a local kiosk owner, which, as far as I can tell, kiosk just means a little shop out in the woods. He lived near Lake Bodom, and he was well known throughout the town for being a fucking asshole. He was very hostile towards campers. He would even go out and cut down their tents and fucking throw rocks at them and shit. He was not a nice guy, and everyone knew it. However, after the murders, the police came and talked to him, but they didn't find any evidence at the time, and he had an alibi. His wife said that they were together the night of the murders and that he never left. But a lot of people still didn't like this one thing. He apparently had a lot of wells on his property, and he filled one of the wells a day or two after the murders. So a lot of people think he disposed of the murder weapons in the well and then filled them so that no one would ever find them. But 9 years later, he was drunk with a neighbor and reported to have said, "I killed them." But never said who he was talking about or any deeper context at all. But then the next day, he killed himself by drowning himself in Lake Bodom. Dead serious. and he he was apparently like walked up to the water, and like there were other people around, and he like got their attention and said, "Watch my last dive," or something like that. So like he wanted people to watch him kill himself. It was crazy. And then even later on, when his widowed wife was dying of breast cancer, she told a friend that she lied about the alibi because Valdemir had threatened her life if she didn't go along with the story. So yeah, there's that too. So apparent like that on his wife on her deathbed said, "No, I lied about that alibi. He didn't have an alibi for that night." That doesn't always necessarily mean that, yeah, he's the murderer. But that's pretty fucking crazy. And once again, he basically confessed. But again, he was drunk. He didn't confess to any official. He was just drunk talking to a friend. Fucking insane. So there's confession number 2. Now, if you thought those two were wild, buckle the fuck up, Jack. Hans... Alright, I'm going to pronounce this as American as possible. Hans Assman. Literally, it's Hans Assman, but Assmann is how you spell his last name. Hans Assman. He was... Now, it's all... I want to be very clear about this. It's all rumor, but there is a shit ton of rumor that suggests he is a former KGB spy and a former police officer and editor. Matty Polaro claims that Assman called him in December 1997 and asked him to come and listen to his life story. Basically, okay, so he's potentially a former KGB spy and a former worker at fucking sorry, technical difficulties. And a former worker at Auschwitz. So basically, a fucking old Nazi KGB motherfucker. Crazy. And now where he comes into the story is apparently the next. I found some conflicting reports. Some said it was the morning after the murders. Some said it was a full day and then the morning after the murders. He apparently came into a hospital in Helsinki. He was acting erratically. He was acting very strange. He was very irritable. He was being very hard to deal with. His fingers were covered in black, what could be dirt, maybe not. He also had stains on his shirt, red stains. And he was even pretending to be unconscious at certain points and stuff like that. And so off of that, a lot of people think that he, in fact, was the murderer. He also didn't have a very good history. He is not a good guy. He beat his girlfriend a lot. He had a lot of domestic issues and stuff like that. Okay, so that, and he apparently lived within a few kilometers of Lake Bodom, within 5 kilometers of Lake Bodom. But in 1997, like I said, he calls in a former police officer to basically give a deathbed confession. He ended up dying in 98. According to Polaro, Assman told him that he served in SS troops and also as a guard in Auschwitz during World War II. Assman came to Helsinki Surgical Hospital the morning after the killings took place. He behaved aggressively, nervously, and faked unconsciousness. His clothes were covered in red stains, presumably blood, but tests were never taken before he left. His clothing matched the description of the murderer, and he also had long blonde hair. So also matching the description of the murderer. So, yeah, this is a fucking this is a pretty wild one because it gets even crazier. So after the description of the murderer came out, he actually cut his hair. So to look like I think he was even quoted somewhere in saying to look less like the description of the murderer, which is fucking insane. Former Detective Chief Inspector, again Polero, suspected that Assman was responsible for another 5 murders. Assman had been linked to unsolved Finnish homicides such as Kilik-Sari's murder in Isioki and the Tililhati double murder in Heinvesi. The latter took place only 10 months prior to the Lake Bodom murders. However, he also had a girlfriend. Yeah, like I said, he also had a girlfriend alibi. She told the police that they were together all night. And I even found a report of the landlord saying that he was there all night, and the red stains were from something he was painting. Like, that's what the landlord said. And the fingertips, which could have been dirt, but could also have been caused by some sort of chemical. And if he was working with weird chemicals and painting shit, that could also explain his weird behavior while at the hospital. What's even crazier is that no one knows why he went to the hospital that day. Like, there's no confirming report of why he checked himself into that hospital. So yeah, there's just a whole lot of strangeness though surrounding him in the hospital. Like, the police didn't spend very long talking to him. He got strange visitors from other countries. There was even one report that said some doctors stole his clothes. The doctors that were working on him were absolutely convinced that the stains were blood and that he was responsible for the Lake Bodom murders. They actually stole his clothes, which was highly illegal, to give to the police for them to test. They got a hold of the police. The police were going to meet him, and then the police never showed up. There was also like another report of like a car, like an unmarked weird car that was like there the whole time that he was in the hospital and then left. And that when he got out, he also matched the description of the blonde man. And Dr. Paulo was one of the doctors who examined him. And then he actually went on to write 3 books about him and his connection to the murders. And former detective... Oh, okay. So Dr. Jorma Paulo was a doctor. And then Detective Matty Polaro even went as far to connect him with 5 other unsolved homicides. And many consider Assman's potential political connections as the reason for his dismissal. Thanks to multiple sources in literature alluding to his guilt, Assman was a public favorite suspect up until 2004, when the investigation decided to reopen after 44 years, claiming more advanced technology had uncovered new blood evidence found on a pair of shoes, and the sudden testimony of a woman claiming to have been camping nearby. This new DNA analysis led to the arrest of a surprising suspect. Now, so those were our first 3 suspects, all right? We have a potential fucking crazy man who admitted to the murder, but he was probably just crazy. We have a potential murderous shop owner, local guy. And we have a potential fucking KGB Auschwitz Nazi motherfucker. All 3 of them are suspects. And he also apparently, yeah, like I said, lived 5 kilometers away. And then in 2004, 44 years after the murders, the case gets reopened because of new forensics, with and they arrest Niles Wilhelm Gunderson. That's right, the only survivor, who, like I said earlier, was dating Malia, who was stabbed 15 times. She was also found with Niles outside of the tent, and she was undressed from the waist down. Niles' shoes were found hidden around 500 meters away, partially buried. And the new shoe evidence was this. There was pretty much blood everywhere, all right? But, so on everyone's clothing and everything. And they found, but the thing is at least with the shoes, there was, because no one was wearing shoes, there was also a lot of blood inside of the shoes. But when they found Niles' shoes, the only blood on the inside of the shoes was from fingerprints. So, in other words, somebody had been wearing the shoes at the time of the murder, and the only blood on the inside of them was bloody hands putting them on and off. Okay, so that's some of the new, stuff they found. In early 2005, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation declared the case was solved based on new analysis on the bloodstains. According to the official statement, Gustafsson basically erupted in a jealous anger over his feelings for his new girlfriend. And the trial started on August 4th, 2005. The prosecution called for life imprisonment, and it argued the re-examination of old evidence using modern techniques such as DNA profiling, raising suspicion towards Gustafsson. The defense argued that the murders were the work of one or more outsider, and that Gustafsson would have been incapable of killing 3 people given the extent of his injuries. Now, Gustafsson was actually acquitted. He was let go, and he was not found guilty of the murders. The prosecution claimed, now see, the supposed new key witness was a woman who claimed that she claimed to be a nearby camper who had apparently had an interaction with the murdered campers before the murder. They apparently came through their campsite, and the 2 boys were drunk. The 2 girls weren't. And apparently the 2 boys were having a bit of an argument. And so the woman who was testifying said that she asked them to leave their campsite because they were having an argument. And so the prosecution was basically trying to argue that they go back to the campsite. They get into, they were basically suggesting that he was being sexually aggressive towards his new girlfriend. His new girlfriend was turning him down. And he got over the top, so the 3 campers told him to get out of the tent and go walk it off and sleep outside or whatever. And while he's outside, he gets mad and ends up committing the murders. And in the process of killing the 3 other campers, he gets his jaw broken, and a concussion, and yeah, that explains his injuries from them fighting back. And that also explains why his girlfriend got an extra 15 stabs after she was already dead. And potentially sexually assaulted, even though there's never... All that is ever mentioned in that is that she was undressed from the waist down. That's all it's ever said. Now, here's the thing. Is that, yes, all this is true in the sense of the new evidence they found with the shoes, but do we really think that okay, so that means he had a broken jaw. Let's be real clear. A, he had a broken jaw, and B, his shoes were found 500 meters away from the campsite. So that means he would have had to have walked 500 meters away, taken his shoes off, partially buried them, and then walked back. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's a lot of fucking real weird things that don't make sense. But then what killer would put on somebody else's shoes? But then again, they were stealing a bunch of stuff. So here, I don't know. Here's kind of my personal theory, is that someone came along and killed them, and then some of the homeless people maybe that lived in the area heard it because they were out too, and they came in and stole some shit. Maybe it's two separate crimes taking place in the same instance. I don't know. But to this day, this case, it remains unsolved. And Gustafson, he fucking throughout, to his credit, throughout everything, he has submitted to every single, like, all the DNA evidence. He agreed to be hypnotized, lie detected, everything. He's been through the gambit and just agreed to it all, and through the whole time maintained his innocence. So, was it him? Was it an outside killer? You know? One thing Gustafson did say, Niles did say back in the day, he when he was trying to give a description of the killer, he said, "I don't remember anything. All I remember is a black hooded figure with red glowing eyes." And yeah, that's those are pretty much, those are the Lake Bodom murders, and that's where that famous case is where Alexi Leho and the boys got the name Children of Bodom. They were actually originally going to go with Lake Bodom, which is a song on their first album, Something Wild, but they ended up going with Children of Bodom. And then the band Children of Bodom has actually, on all of their album covers, they have like a mascot that's a Grim Reaper, a black hooded figure. And they're also on the first album, not only is there a song called Lake Bodom, but there is a part 1 and 2 song called Red Light in My Eyes. And the cover features the Grim Reaper at Lake Bodom. And in fact, the albums Something Wild, Hate Breeder, Follow the Reaper, Relentless, Reckless Forever, Halo of Blood, and I Worship Chaos all feature their mascot, the Grim Reaper. They call him Roy at Lake Bodom on all those covers. Some of them are wonderful. Follow the Reaper is one of everyone's favorites because it actually features the Reaper in the water with a bunch of gravestones around him, the gravestones. And then one of my favorites is Halo of Blood, where the lake is frozen over, and if you actually look under the ice, you can see like faces and stuff. It's fucking awesome. But yeah, so that's where Children of Bodom, that is the folklore surrounding the name Children of Bodom, and that's where they got their band name and all that stuff from. So, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Heavy Metal Folklore, and we will be back again very soon. We'll be, like I said, we've got a handful coming up. We got a handful of more ideas for this, and if you have any ideas, if you know of any folklore surrounding bands or anything like that, please contact us on Instagram, Facebook, or shoot us an email at lostinthedarkpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. But other than that, that's about it from me. Thank you very, very much for getting lost with me tonight, and we will be back again very soon with another episode. We have 420 special coming up this weekend. You know it. First recreational 420 ever. Very excited. So we will be back again very soon. Thank you all for listening. I love you all to death. Good night.